being the final nail in the coffin for Balky. But the fact it took Shad Khan this long to realize Balky wasn't the guy is just flat out embarrassing and shows why the Jaguars continue to be an incompetent organization. I'm Zach Gelb.
This is the story of the one who, as a maintenance specialist for a historic high-rise, knows that vintage charm historically needs constant attention. Which is why, when it's time to upgrade turn-of-the-century mechanicals, they turn to Grainger. With easy access to 1 million-plus products and the scale to deliver when and where you need them. The right tools and supplies are never far away. So the one can keep that vintage building running like new. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Right now at Wendy's, get 2 of these fave items for just $7. The spicier classic chicken sandwich, Dave's single, or 10-piece nugs. It's an incredible deal, but an insanely difficult choice. Do you go double chicky sando, both spicy and classic, 1 beefy and 1 chicky? Or maybe you go all in on one and go Nug Max. 2 faves for just $7? Gotta be Wendy's.
At participating Wendy's for a limited time only. Select a request 2 for $7 deal to redeem. Not valid in a combo or with saucy nugs. Single item at regular.
The best deals are awaiting you at InsaneRadioDeals.com. Head to the website right now to take advantage of these great deals. Build your own dozen gift cards to Duck Donuts, Fleet Feet Roanoke gift cards, Aqua Trek Adventures, Frostbite Athletic Club memberships, and AsiaRed.com annual club memberships. All at InsaneRadioDeals.com. Discounts and savings for you. All at InsaneRadioDeals.com.
Miss Fernandez, what are those tiny things?
Those are what we call amoebas. You can only see them through a microscope.
Wow.
Today's students are tomorrow's great thinkers and innovators. But right now, there's a funding crisis in public schools. Millions of kids go to schools that don't have funding for books, computers, and so much more just because of where they live. You can help change that. Donors Choose is a nonprofit that lets you support students and teachers in your community and beyond. You choose which supplies to support. You could provide first graders with pencils and paper, or other students with their first chapter books, help a music class get a guitar.
You could even supply a classroom like mine with a science project. But what you're really giving is the moment that sparks a brighter tomorrow.
To learn more, please visit DonorsChoose.org. That's DonorsChoose.org. Choose students. Shape the future.
You're stepping into the fast lane on the VTRN Sports app. 93.3 FM and 1320 AM Lynchburg, or by asking Alexa or Google Home, open VTRN Sports Lynchburg. Now, take the fast lane through the topics that matter across the Commonwealth. This is the Fast Lane with Ed Lane.
Sometimes it's good just to have a slump buster, if you will. The definition of that varies depending on the context and with whom you're speaking. Our good buddy Calvin Harris, the U Podcast, Miami Hurricanes National Championship Center, 87, 89, 91, started on the 89 and 91 teams, has one version of it involved in the dating world, if you will, loosely speaking. There are other versions, though, when it comes to the world of sports or life. If you're in sales, sometimes you just need to get that contract across the finish line. May not be the biggest deal you ever do, but when you're in a slump, and we all hit them in sales, sometimes it just helps to see the contract get processed through whatever system you have. Great. It's an awesome feeling. When it comes to sports, for the Virginia Cavaliers, they needed a slump buster and got it last night. Let's not kid ourselves here. The win against Boston College, hardly going to be mistaken as earth-shattering. If you think Virginia's in a tough spot when it comes to resources, program attractiveness and support, and NIL, try being Boston College. We've been vocal here in the Fast Lane about how if we were to cut schools out of the ACC, or if you're looking at schools from the conference and their desirability to be part of a larger Super League and play big revenue sharing and pay-for-play college sports, Boston College, the small prep school that's at best the 5th most popular sports brand in the New England area behind all the pro sports teams, they don't exactly come to mind. And it goes back to what we mentioned yesterday about, I don't think Mike Young has forgotten how to coach at Virginia Tech. I don't think Tony Bennett has forgotten to coach based on the last handful of years at Virginia. And I still think Earl Grant has been a good coach, but the success at Boston College has eroded because they just don't have the resources that other programs have. And so it's hard to really get a gauge on if the guy's a good basketball coach or he's just fighting a battle with one hand tied behind his back. If anything, we'll call it your dominant hand tied behind your back. And Virginia is someone in that spot, but I think there's more optimism for Virginia in the larger sense. We've seen the infusion of money for NIL purposes in football and women's basketball, designed to get other people to buy in to those sports. Literally speaking, of course, with their donations, but figuratively as well with collective investment and spurring the action. There's upside at Virginia. It's not going to solve anything this year. If they get it soon, it might actually solve things next year because we've seen it in basketball where you can have a real quick turnaround. Back to the point about St. John's from yesterday, but the Red Storm a couple of years ago were not a very desirable program. Last year under Rick Pitino, just barely missed the NCAA tournament, but they clearly improved. This year, they've taken another step forward. They're at the top of the Big East. They'll be going to the Big Dance. Virginia could be in that spot with the right hire, and maybe it's Ron Sanchez. I have my doubts, but they're less than they were. And the resource part, which I think that's the clear component of this. Because it's not that Tony Bennett forgot how to coach. It's not that Mike Young has forgotten how to coach. It's where your resources lie. And frankly, I'll be real here. Virginia's got a larger and more well-endowed base of fans. Yes, they're supporting football and women's basketball. They should be doing the same for men's basketball. It's a different approach from Virginia Tech, which they've got some well-endowed financially alums at Virginia Tech, but it's not the volume of what you've got at a place like Virginia. So I get why Virginia Tech, they're funneling the resources to football because we got to pick a sport. We're going with the one that's our biggest as a school history and the one that generates the most excitement and can position us. I think Virginia's in a different spot. People have mentioned that Virginia would be attractive to the SEC or the Big Ten if they were to grow their conferences. Not because they're good at football.
Because they're a higher education.
I don't really think it's that either. I think it's the large alumni base. It's the fact that they're deemed a state school, and there's brand cachet and value with that name, similar to North Carolina. Great in basketball, not as great in the revenue-generating sports, although shout out to our guy, Michael Lombardi.
The bigger revenue-generating sports.
Yes, the bigger ones. The biggest one, shall we say. Because Virginia has been pretty good in men's basketball, but not in football at all.
Yeah.
That's where they are. So sometimes it's good just to be in this spot. And Ron Sanchez, last night, I think it was a good reminder to Virginia fans that sometimes you just need to bust out of the slump. You need the slump buster because, especially when you're undermanned, you've lost both point guards, essentially. I have no disillusion that Christian Bliss is going to come back. Maybe it's a pleasant surprise, but I'm not holding my breath, and I wouldn't if I were a Virginia fan. And they already lost Jalen Worley, the other point guard, and it's had a trickle-down effect on the offense, but winning's hard.
Winning is hard. Anybody who takes winning for granted has never either wore a uniform or, has been on the sideline or has not been a part of a team. Winning is hard. Everybody wants to win. So it's nice, to kind of get off that slide and, hopefully start a streak. Every streak starts with one, and, we're here and now we prepare for the next one. And hopefully we'll get two. And then, maybe we'll attack that. But it's good for the guys. They deserve, to have a little more success. The SMU game still sits with us, a little bit because we had that one. And, but now we're back at home and got some energy from our students, which is awesome. And, really happy for the guys that they got a victory under their belt today.
It's good for Virginia in that sense. Does it answer the question about Sanchez being the good long-term coach? Not really. Does it answer the question about this team being able to snap out of their slump and actually go on a run? No. But at least, hey, you're not in Miami spot. They're playing hard. They're still doing things the right way. And that's a big asset if you're the Virginia Cavaliers, which is part of the reason why if you're Virginia, it was just good to see that. And there will be more opportunities going forward. This is not an NCAA tournament team. This probably isn't an NIT caliber team. But if they keep playing hard and at least you can see signs of progress, you might be able to sell me on the idea that Ron Sanchez just needs the financial resources that he actually can relate to his players and does know X's and O's acumen. And the fact that you're at least winning these games against the bottom feeders of a bottom feeder conference, it's a valuable thing. And one of the key elements is against a team like this, they were locked in, they were engaged, and there needed to be no motivation and button pushing from the start.
When you're at home, especially, you get a little extra energy from the crowd, of course, and that was really nice to have. But, when you get started well offensively, it kind of just it gives you just an injection. You can't put too much pressure on your D if you're not putting the ball in the basket. I mean, I think I said it yesterday. I don't know who I was talking to. At the end of the offensive possession, you want to put the ball in the basket. At the end of the defensive possession, you want to end it with the rebound. Like those are the two goals at the end of both of those possessions. And, getting off to a good offensive start just makes it a lot easier.
Ron Sanchez, Virginia men's basketball coach, after the 74-56 victory last night against Boston College. And I mean, when you're in a slump like Virginia, they were 1-6 entering the game in ACC play last night. And that's bad in general. And it's even worse in a bad ACC. Sometimes it is about getting back to the basics and just reinstilling those beliefs. So it's a real cool thing right there. We'll pivot now. We've talked some basketball to start. We'll get to more of that in the Fast Five at 5-ish, around 5:25-ish, 5:30 today here in the Fast Lane. But we pivot off of basketball back to football because, as you know right now, and you've known for the last handful of weeks, and frankly the entire NFL season, VTR in Sports, your home for NFL action throughout the regular season and the entire NFL playoffs. And a voice you heard over the weekend in Kansas City, taking over a new role, kind of, pinch hitting for Kevin Harlan, who was playing sick. And also, you hear him on the sidelines regularly. He's a color analyst, and he's generous enough to join us in the Fast Lane. Ross Tucker back with us. Ross, first of all, a pleasure to speak with you. Hope you're well. Hopefully you're traveling smoothly. Had an interesting question, though, that popped up. I was listening to your podcast earlier today with Olivia Harlan-Decker, the Ross Tucker football podcast. And she mentioned one of the skills that you have, and we've noticed it as well here on VTR in Sports, is the ability to translate the game in a rather simple way for listeners to be able to consume and understand. Just curious, but you also partner with Future Fans, which is a real cool avenue to introduce younger kids to the game of football. I've got young kids, so it's something that's on the horizon for us as well. How much has that partnership helped you become a better broadcaster, your Future Fans partnership, and translating into what we get to enjoy, which is a great listening experience on Westwood One and the VTR and Sports platforms?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely helped. I wish I had heard about Future Fans earlier, Ed, when my kids were a little bit younger. I don't know that I did a great job of, teaching them about football. Maybe part of it is because I was away every weekend, and so I wasn't with them that often. I think the 12-year-old has a pretty decent idea of what's going on. The 11-year-old, not so much. But, I have these buddies of mine that are Bengals fans that I met recently, and they could not get their kids to sit and watch the Bengals playoff run a few years ago. And they were very frustrated because the kids weren't into it. And they're like, no, you don't understand. Like, this never happens. We're the Bengals. This never happens for us. You got to sit down and you got to watch this. And so they struggled. They struggled mightily to get their kids to actually be able to sit and watch the games with them. And so they came up with this storybook-led activity book, which is really, really cool because it has games and chapter stories that help you learn exactly how football works. So you read a chapter and then you'll do like a ring toss or something where you get a chance to learn the downs. I mean, I can't tell you how many videos I've seen now or people I've spoke to that they now do have their 7-year-old or their 8-year-old or their 6-year-old sit there and watch the games with them, which I would think would be a big deal in Virginia with you guys now, Ed, with the number of Commanders fans. I would think everybody wants them to sit there and watch the game with them this Sunday, the NFC Championship. So it's not too late. Go to futurefans.com and order one of those storybook-led activity boxes. I think if you have any kids or you know anybody with kids, grandkids, whatever, I think they'll love it.
It's a real cool idea and something that you've kind of spurred us. We have to try that in our house. My wife and I have 2 6-year-old boys, and we're kind of in that introductory age of just introducing new activities to them. And futurefans.com is a great way for our listeners to become acquainted with that. And it has, in our opinion, made broadcasts. They've always been great, but they're even better now with Ross Tucker on the call for Westwood One. And he'll be part of our coverage, which begins Sunday at 2 p.m. right here on VTR in Sports for the first of those two games. The one you mentioned, the excitement around Jaden Daniels and the Washington Commanders. How alive are the Commanders? 6.5 point underdogs, but I heard you and Steve Fezzik talking about that on the Even Money podcast the other day about this matchup. He really likes the Commanders and thinks there's a chance to pull off the outright upset. You think it's within the number of 6, but Philadelphia, it's hard to beat them. Give us your logic on how this game is going to unfold when we're listening Sunday at 2 p.m.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the Commanders are on an incredible run. I'm so impressed by not only Jaden Daniels, but the job that Cliff Kingsbury is doing with Jaden Daniels. It's been super, super impressive to this point. I would say, though, on some level, the Lions gave up a lot of really big plays. And obviously, they also lost the turnover battle significantly. The Bucs probably were going to win that game against the Commanders until they had a couple of major faux pas in the fourth quarter themselves. And so I think, the Eagles being as talented as they are, as long as they don't make those mistakes, as long as they don't beat themselves, I think it'll be a good game. But ultimately, I would take the Eagles to prevail. Can't give up the explosive plays and can't turn it over like the Lions did.
Concerns for Philadelphia, and we'll get to the Washington angle of this game momentarily. Washington at Philly, 2 p.m. airtime, VTRN Sports and our platforms and on our Virginia Talk Radio Network news stations as well, by the way. We're blowing out the budget for the conference championships and the Super Bowl. Injuries for Philadelphia. Which ones do you believe are the most legitimate and game hampering? Cornerback Quinyon Mitchell, quarterback Jalen Hurts, or maybe the one that's kind of gone under the radar, and Steve Fezzik kind of dropped a nugget about this on the Even Money podcast if our listeners want to check it out. But the wide receiver A.J. Brown with his injury that's seemingly limited production as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's Hurts. Although Quinyon Mitchell, if he can't play, that would definitely be significant. There's no question. But I do think ultimately it's Hurts because his ability to run is just such a critical component of the Eagles offense. I mean, obviously the run game with Saquon, a lot of that comes off of at least the threat of the run with Hurts. And then even a lot of the passes are RPOs where there's some very real threat of Hurts running it on those plays. So I guess I just think if he can't run it, and the Commanders are probably going to force him to show whether or not he can very early in the game, we'll find out. If he can't really run it the same way, that's going to limit the Eagles' offense significantly, although I'm sure, they'll have a pretty good feel for whether or not he can run this week as they go through it. And so then the question will become, how do they game plan? How do they call it, right? Like if they don't want him to run, then they'll probably call just more quick passes and more runs with Saquon, which honestly might end up being better for them.
The other side of the injuries, and this is one that has not gotten discussed all that much, but you played in the NFL as an offensive lineman, including for the previous name of this franchise in Washington. But Sam Cosmi, the right guard for Washington, to me, it's just glaring red lights. Hello, Jalen Carter, meet Jaden Daniels. Is it going to be that easy for Jalen Carter, who has already been dominant, to have an even bigger impact this Sunday?
Well, it's going to be interesting to see what they do, right? I mean, if they just put Trent Scott in there, then either way they're going to have to try to double and slide to Jalen Carter to try to stop him. But if they just put Trent Scott in there, then that you're not moving anybody, but you're obviously getting weaker at that position. That's a big drop off. If, as I've seen suggested elsewhere, they potentially put, Andrew Wiley in at guard and Cornelius Lucas in at tackle, that would be really fascinating because you're moving multiple guys around and you might be creating issues at multiple spots as opposed to just at one spot. So the fact that they don't clearly know who they would go ahead and put in there, I think is very telling and probably not a great sign for the Commanders. Either way, they absolutely need to double team Jalen Carter on as many snaps as they possibly can. He's an incredible football player.
Ross Tucker NFL, Twitter and Instagram, and of course the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, in addition to 2 p.m. this coming Sunday for Philly, Washington at Philly for the NFC Championship game. Ross, AFC Championship game. We've seen this movie before. Will we see the same outcome as before, where Buffalo leaving with their hearts broken in Kansas City?
Well, candidly, I hope not, man. I don't know how much more their fans can take, or their players. I like to see fresh blood. I like to see new guys getting a chance to go to the Super Bowl and experience that. So only time will tell. It's a little bit similar, Ed, to what we just talked about with the Eagles. You know, most of the teams, it seems like, that lose to the Chiefs, they kind of beat themselves. They turn it over, or they have critical penalties at inopportune times, or quarterback takes sacks out of scoring range. I don't think that's going to be the case with the Bills. I don't think the Bills are going to beat themselves. I think the Chiefs are going to have to beat them. And, it could go either way. They certainly could. But it really does feel to me like it's time for the Bills to get over the hump, although I probably thought that last year too, and they weren't able to do it. So we'll see. They're certainly not afraid. I mean, they beat them in the regular season, it feels like, every year, but then they lose them in the playoffs seemingly every year. So maybe this year is different. I'd expect them to have a better game plan than the Texans did to stop Travis Kelce. And I'd also think that I would expect Josh Allen to run the ball a lot. I mean, it's now or never.
Ross, we'll wrap up the football portion of this question or chat today on this question, and that is, what are we more likely to see? You opined very eloquently and well, and I can't remember which Ross Tucker podcast it was this week, but on just the basic science of guard Travis Kelce, since he's the best pass catcher, which I'll second that and say there's not even Tyreek Hill to have to worry about guarding, so Kelce should be your option. But the other thing of what we're more likely to see, and that is, if you're going to get flagged for, hitting Patrick Mahomes with his stutter step, then cut out of bounds at the last second and draw the flag, how likely are we to see, and maybe it's not this weekend, but at some point, someone say, well, to hell with it, pardon my French here, but if I'm going to get flagged for it, we might as well just take as hard and as many shots like that as possible, because if we're going to get flagged, at least get our money's worth.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I don't think you want to do that, because I don't think you want to get the penalty. But I can understand that sentiment and that logic for sure. I said this on social media at Ross Tucker NFL, and maybe on the Even Money podcast. He really does a tremendous job of drawing the foul. He knows the rules. He knows what the refs are looking for, and he tries to give the refs what they're looking for. He tries to give the refs what they want. I don't care for it visually. I guess I called it the soccerification of the NFL, but it's also hard to argue with a guy doing everything he possibly can to help his team win the game. And for Mahomes, this is part of it. For Mahomes, trying to draw these fouls is a big, big part of it.
Ross, it's not hard to argue that if you're spending a lot of time with football season, which we all are as it wraps up right now, and maybe your wife is wanting an argument with you, there's one easy way out. Valentine's Day is on the horizon, and you can go right now to myfrontpagestory.com, have a custom story written about her, for her, and present it as a gift on Valentine's Day. And then all those thoughts that you've watched too much football or listened to too much football on VTR and sports, including our guy Ross Tucker, all of that goes out the window, because she is eternally grateful for one of the coolest gifts, a story about your special someone given on the day for your special someone, myfrontpagestory.com.
Yeah, it's awesome. I'm a huge fan of it. I think it's by far the best Valentine's Day gift that I'm aware of. You could probably speak to it more than I could. Ed, as well, since you got one for your wife, and I've seen the video, and it's awesome. You know, I'm just a big fan in general in life of telling people how you feel about them. I mean, life is short, you know? I mean, life is really short, and especially the people that you really love or are a big part of your life, do something different this year. You know, it seems like so many people go ahead and they do the flowers or maybe take them out to dinner, and there's nothing wrong with those things at all. But to be able to have a professional writer write an incredible story about your wife, talking about how amazing she is, I can almost guarantee your wife will cry. It's called myfrontpagestory.com. Myfrontpagestory.com. She will cry. You will win. Give her the front page treatment she deserves.
Indeed. Look, you said almost cry. I can say she will cry because I gave myfrontpagestory.com to my wife a few years ago, and it still brings up the awesome memories. And by the way, it's kind of helpful whenever she's a little upset. You can just point to it on the wall and say, remember that?
I love it. I love it.
Ross, thank you for your time today in the Fast Lane. We're more than thankful for your time and your generosity. Appreciate it. We'll keep it locked to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast Network and Ross Tucker NFL, and even more so this Sunday, 2 p.m. airtime for our conference championship game coverage on VTRN Sports.
Awesome. Love it. Thank you so much, Ed.
Indeed. Ross Tucker with us here in the Fast Lane and appreciative of his time. When we return in the Fast Lane, an NFL story that we didn't get a chance to ask him about. But Trey Lyle is smiling because paging Trey Lyle, as I said.
Apparently, I do have better job security than this guy.
Oh, yes. Find out what we mean next here in the Fast Lane.
We're here with Colt from We Fix Stupid Computers. Colt, to go along with your residential or individual walk-in services that you offer, you also do a lot of business IT support. How about you discuss that, and what specifically do you do to help businesses in the area?
We see a lot of that. Small to medium-sized businesses, they still have their IT projects. They still need resources to help them within their office and for remote users. And so we'll step in and fill in the gap where we do a lot of projects for them, help them manage their resources, their budgets, and get their technology under control.
Colt, how can these people reach out to you to assess their IT needs?
Call us. Our number is 434-525-8590. Our website, wefixstupidcomputers.com. We're on Facebook, and our office is here locally, 14690 Forest Road, right next to Scott's Cabinet on 221.
Real soul food. You feel the warmth from the first bite to the last? That feeling comes to life at the Yard on 5th Street. Staples like fried catfish sandwich and platter, smoked wings, pulled pork, and Philly brisket sandwich, just like a cheesesteak, except with smoked briskets. Come feel the warmth in every bit of Lynchburg's best soul food. The Yard on 5th Street in downtown Lynchburg.
Allstate agent Donovan Howell is now serving Lynchburg. He lives and works here just like you. And with all kinds of local insurance advice, Donovan is someone you can count on to help you protect all that's good in your life. Donovan makes it easy to save on the quality protection you need, and I'll even help you do the switching and the paperwork for you.
Call or come by the Donovan Howell Allstate office in Windhurst today.
Step into the Fast Lane 24/7 at Trey Lyle VT and Fast Lane Ed Lane on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Now, back to the Fast Lane.
Paging Trey Lyle. Paging Trey Lyle. What do we mean? Find out right now in the Fast Five at 5-ish.
It's time for Fast Five at 5-ish. 5-ish minutes on 5 relevant topics done around 5 p.m.-ish. Ish, because our counting skills are kind of ish. Let's start with number 5.
Well, Trey, it happened today around 3:30 p.m. Trent Baalke fired as GM of the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Can I talk about what happened before it to why he probably got fired?
Fire away.
So, of course, as mentioned, Ben Johnson picked the Bears, and we've already mentioned on this show how it was structurally, he didn't like the structure, or what was it, the setup? That was the word, setup in Jacksonville. And then this morning, it's announced that Liam Cohen, probably the number 2 person for the job, is staying in Tampa and getting this extension. And then it's like, oh, I guess it's going to be Robert Saleh.
The Jets retread coach. When I saw that, I'm thinking, can I interject for a quick second? When I saw Robert Saleh was on the consideration, my first reaction was, that's how bad it is that they have to go after an unsuccessful retread?
Yeah, to be fair, I feel like Robert Saleh got a unreal bad hand and actually did, like, he won 7 games with Zach Wilson, so he might actually be a good coach and just had, like, the worst quarterback situation possible. And if he has Trevor Lawrence, that's an upgrade. Like, no matter what you can say about Trevor Lawrence, he's better than Zach Wilson. And
well, I think Shad Khan, the owner of the Jaguars, seems more like the Texans owner, where it's like they're just kind of ignorant and they're trusting the wrong people, as opposed to the Jets.
And then when you trust the right people, good things happen.
Yeah, whereas the Jets, it's more like you have an egotistical owner who thinks his 17-year-old.
We're getting off track. This led to Trent Baalke being fired because clearly, as Shad Khan said after they fired Doug Peterson, when he was asked, would you fire, if a coach didn't like Trent Baalke, would you fire him? He said yes. And basically, none of the coaches that he wanted to hire liked Trent Baalke, so he fired Trent Baalke, which honestly, it's a messed up way to get to the right destination.
It is. It goes back to what Mark Dominic said on VSiN by the Books a couple of weeks ago. VSiN by the Books, weekdays, 8 to 10 a.m., VTR and Sports app.
Yeah, again, I think it was the bill of goods. Like, this is a great roster. We just have a really bad coaching staff. I mean, I think that's what's been bought by the Khan family, and they've been conned. I mean, I don't know other way to say it, but I just don't feel like that this team is as good as they thought they were on paper. And I think that Trent Baalke, happy for him and his family, certainly doesn't get fired. It's a miserable thing to go through.
Sure.
But I think this makes this job less desirable.
You have a power struggle mindset that people associate with you, like Trent Baalke, and you don't even have the results to back it up. That's where it gets to be problematic. Look, there are a lot of people in the world that are very good at finding a way to connect with the owners of businesses and don't actually have to put any investment into it, but they know how to put themselves in position to be perceived as smart. And then when things go south, they always, they deflect the blame very easily. But at some point, as I like to say, the devil collects their due. The debt is going to be paid. And we finally got to the point where, like Trey said, when everybody who might have gone to Jacksonville, essentially, it seems, all said, nah, we don't want to go there because we don't like the GM. And the GM's has never had success when he's been in charge of building a roster. Jacksonville overtaking Jim Harbaugh in San Francisco. It's always gone south. It's not exactly a good look. Number 4. Speaking of things that are not exactly a good look, but rather comical, there is a situation that has unfolded in Philadelphia. Eagles fans have apparently tried to sell snow from the game on Sunday against the Rams.
I think the Eagles are doing it.
Oh, the Eagles are doing it?
Dave Zangaro tweeted this out so I can
clarify for me, because I had somebody.
The Eagles are selling snow for Sunday's game. Yeah, so if you go eagles.therealist.com. So it's a partnership with The Realist, but yeah, it's officially licensed by Philadelphia.
Wow. That's where we are. I mean, hey,
to be fair, it's a site where you can buy there's an auction for the green neon playoff sign and then grass from all the playoff games and then seats. So it's like stuff from the stadium. So this kind of makes sense.
I mean,
it's sold out too.
It's entrepreneurial. It's comical that it's sold out, and people are actually going to spend their hard-earned dollar bills, y'all. As Kenny Powers would like to remind us. Wow, only in America.
My favorite part, Dave Zangaro of NBC Philadelphia says, but I'll sell you snow from my backyard for $10 a bucket while supplies last.
You know what's funny is I at least buy that it's legit snow because the Eagles are selling it. I thought this was something that fans were going to sell, which was even more comical. But alas, the fact that people would buy snow it's kind of an eye-rolling situation.
Hey, I mean, I would not be shocked if part of that goes to the Eagles Autism Foundation. So
to their credit, the Eagles are very big in working with kids with autism, and that's a cool thing they do. And hey, if that's how you raise money and people want to buy it, would I spend my money on that? Probably not. But hey, heck, I'd rather buy a piece of the stadium, and as long as it's if all the money's going there, cool.
And
it's entrepreneurial, go for it.
And it's only $50, so theoretically, like, it covers the dry ice and the shipping, probably like 3/4 of that. So it's not like they're making this insane profit off of it.
Where would you keep that? You just stick it in the freezer, I guess.
Yes.
The only place you can. Otherwise it's gonna melt. Better up you don't have a power outage, or you're gonna be up the creek on that one. That collected snow and ice is just gonna have to be a block that was originally snow. You got to turn your mic back on.
Oh, yeah, I should. That would help. You make snow cream out of it. You know, like you would do this as a kid. Like you take the snow and like milk and like make snow ice cream out of it. You could do that, but I wouldn't do that with that. Well, there's like grown men that ran on it. But
speaking of dumb, by the way, one article from SI.com linked Liberty University as a possible destination for Jaden Rashada. Yes, Jaden Rashada, the one that was supposed to go to Miami for money, but then Florida for money, then Miami, then Florida, then eventually went to Arizona State for no money. And shocker of all shockers, he transferred out when he could get more money from Georgia. And no, it seems like, hey, to his ever-loving credit, the dad has been great at peddling the kid, but it sure doesn't look like the kid is as gifted as his parents might think him to be. Liberty is mentioned as a possible destination. Not only have the Flames already added 2 transfer quarterbacks, and yes, Rashada on raw talent may be better than Michael Merdiger from North Carolina, or Ethan Dasco from Coastal Carolina, or Jaden Bradford, the 4-star from IMG, or Ryan Berger. But is it worth the headache with what seems to be around this kid? It may not be Jaden Rashada's fault himself. It seems like he's got a lot of people in his ear. Go read the article from, I believe it was theathletic.com, about Rashada and, him being tearful. He wanted to go to Florida, but Miami was the monetary destination. Then it was kind of a ping pong spot. To me, it's kind of, he was a pawn in this situation when it comes to money and NIL. And sometimes money takes you out of what you really want and what's the most comfortable for you. And when you factor all that in, is it really worth the headache for Jamie Chadwell? If the guy could perform at a really high level, go for it. I trust Chadwell and his staff scouting wise, but I've never seen anything about Jaden Rashada other than, since all this circus has followed him around, his productivity has gone down and the juice doesn't seem to be worth the squeeze.
Number 2.
Speaking of dumb. Oh, Trey touched on this today in the morning warm-up. Morning warm-up, wherever you listen to podcasts. 7 to 8 a.m. BTR in sports. Baseball's Hall of Fame. Ichiro 1 spot short of being unanimous. Much like Derek Jeter was 1 spot short of being unanimous. Much like the fact that they will not let in people with Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens, and others with obvious ties to the steroid and PED era.
Even though there's people with obvious ties to the steroid era in the Hall of Fame.
I have mocked the guardians of the game in basketball who hate like the Tony Bennett style, even though it was successful until Virginia just didn't have the NIL funds to compare and compete with other programs, and the talent eroded. And, it's hard to win at that level. And I think Bennett duct taped it together as well as you could. And, it just kind of is what it is. But the dumbest thing is the guardians of the game in baseball. It's worse than basketball. By far worse than basketball. The guardians of the game in baseball are the ones who don't let in a candidate that should obviously be a Hall of Famer because we've never had a unanimous candidate. So why should we break precedent for Derek Jeter or Ichiro or others that are deserving? They'll find a way to make sure Shohei Ohtani is not unanimous. They'll find a way to make sure Bryce Harper is not unanimous. They'll find a way to make sure that Mike Trout is not unanimous. Just because precedent. And the PED thing. And I know we're revisiting this, but it's ridiculous. Here's the thing for me. Just put them in and have a notation that they used PEDs and it was part of their career. Let them go in because of what they accomplished. But don't absolve them from the PED part being mentioned because that's part of their legacy. And if they balk at that, too bad, so sad. You get to go in the Hall of Fame, but there were multiple reports of PEDs being out there. They're there. If you don't want to take ownership of it, fine. If you don't want to show up to the induction ceremony like T.O. did for the Pro Football Hall of Fame, fine. But ultimately, we're going to put you in. We're going to give you your spot because of what you accomplished. But we're going to tell the whole story because to me, the Hall of Fame is about telling the whole story for fans, especially younger fans, back what we were discussing with Ross Tucker earlier with the whole future fans thing, but younger fans to understand what the game is like and the history of it.
Number 1.
Virginia Tech, they stayed in-house and hired former Staten River Golden Eagle, Jarrett Ferguson, to be their new strength and conditioning coach. I love it. I think it's really cool that you're talking about a Virginia Tech guy. Brent Pry would be familiar with him. Similar in age range. They were at Virginia Tech in the 90s in a similar time frame. Clearly somebody who's been around in Blacksburg for a while. He was there, left in 2017, came back to Blacksburg with Dwight Gauld in 2022 as an assistant. You know, he played football for Virginia Tech. And I know there are a lot of good strength and conditioning coaches that are out there, and it's deemed one of the most important positions just because of the limited contact you can have with these players in the offseason. Why? I don't know. They're not collectively bargained at this point, but whatever. But if you play for the school and know what it takes to embody those values, it can be a real asset. And to Brent Pry's credit, they made changes in an area when the team didn't look well conditioned in the fourth quarter and the bodies didn't look like they were able to hold up with injuries and other challenges over the course of the season. Am I banking on like 10 wins now for Virginia Tech because of this? No, but it might be an unsung area for improvement hiring former Staten River Golden Eagle Jarrett Ferguson. Meanwhile, when we return in the fast lane, we'll go in depth into the semifinals of the NFL playoffs, conference championship weekend, and the semifinals of the Australian Open. Drew Dinsick, NBC Sports Bet the Edge, back with us once again here in the fast lane, VTR and Sports app, and 93.3 FM.
It's time for the annual Volkswagen Sign and Drive event going on now at Terry Volkswagen. During this event, Volkswagen throws out the best deals of the year. For example, right now you can lease a new 2024 Volkswagen Tiguan Wolfsburg Edition for only $389 per month, or a new VW Taos for only $299 a month. That's zero down, folks. Just sign and drive with approved credit. But don't wait, because these deals don't come along often. Come see us today at Terry Volkswagen, where we say you'll love our cars.
When shopping for auto liability insurance, it's wise to consider the best policy, not the cheapest. Hi, I'm Randy Trost with Trost Law. It's crucial to have more than the minimum insurance on your auto liability policy. This protects you if you injure someone or if someone without proper insurance hurts you. Having the right policy ensures you have sufficient underinsured coverage to take care of you and your family. To learn more how we can help you navigate these challenges, visit us at trostlaw.com. That's trostlaw.com.
Welcome to the Villas at Oakwood. Our stunning community offers spacious, modern villas with top-of-the-line amenities. Enjoy views of the Peaks of Otter from your patio home. Connect with neighbors at our exclusive clubhouse. Discover your dream home today. Experience the maintenance-free lifestyle you deserve. Visit us just behind Bedford Memorial Hospital. Online at oakwoodvillas.com. Or just contact Robin Lee Sage, 434-238-4477.
This Sunday is Conference Championship Weekend, and the Virginia Talk Radio Network is here for you with a Virginia Talk Radio Network megacast. VTR and Sports has been bringing you all the big games all year in the NFL, and now we're blowing it out for the NFC and AFC Championship game. Catch the Philadelphia Eagles taking on the Washington Commanders and the Kansas City Chiefs taking on the Buffalo Bills, with coverage starting at 2 p.m. this Sunday across the entire Virginia Talk Radio Network.
Step into the Fast Lane 24/7 at Trey Lyle VT and Fast Lane Ed Lane on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Now, back to the Fast Lane.
I'm not overly convicted, but Trey and I are probably going to be on different aisles when it comes, or different sides of the aisle when it comes to Conference Championship Weekend in the NFL. Same thing with our next guest, Drew Dinsick, NBC Sports Bet the Edge podcast. He's at whale_capper on Twitter and Instagram. Drew, a pleasure to be speaking with you. Conference Championship Weekend. I heard the Bet the Edge podcast earlier this week when you were breaking down with initial thoughts on those Conference Championship games. Coverage begins 2 p.m. Eastern, VTR and Sports app, and across our Virginia Talk Radio Network spoken word platforms. Philadelphia and Washington. You're on Philly. Are you still feeling as confident as you were previously?
I'm feeling even more confident. What do you mean, Ed?
Of course.
No, this is a tough game because the way that Jaden Daniels is playing is obviously well documented at this point, and he's got that whiff of when there's like an ingenue tennis star that breaks onto the scene and they're making a deep run, and you're just like, when are they going to get nervous? And it's like, they don't know any better. They don't know they're not supposed to be doing this. And it's like, it's kind of got that feeling where they're playing loose, free, cool football. But I will say that this is a monumental ask, which is you're going up against an opponent who is really well rostered to, give your strengths a tough time. And you're going up against, a divisional foe who's planned for you twice. So there's really nothing new that you can bring to the table that they haven't already seen, that they haven't already worked out a plan for. And you're on the road for the fourth straight week, which is maybe the biggest factor. Like Washington, is the potential that they're a little travel weary, that they don't come out with as much, kind of fire and, spit and vinegar. Then that's kind of my expectation. And that's going to be a problem when you're up against, a team like the Eagles with as much of a home field advantage as they are afforded at the link. And I will acknowledge that the better quarterback plays for Washington. I will acknowledge that the better coach coaches Washington. But I do think that, the schematic is pretty straightforward for the Philly defense here. Create pressure with 4. Use your advantage, particularly with Jalen Carter against the backup guard who's stepping in for Sam Cosmi with the torn ACL. Get in Jaden Daniels' face early and often. Force him to scramble. Force him to execute plays out of structure, and then use your Vic Fangio style defense of the 2 high shell and collapse that umbrella on whatever part of the field he is trying to work with as he is escaping pressure. The fact that the linebacking core, Zach Bond, is kind of leading the charge there for Philadelphia is so athletic is exciting to me. The fact that the safeties are, quite solid in terms of pursuit is exciting. So when I kind of break down, like, is there a offense versus defense matchup that I'm super excited about? I'm softly excited about Barkley against this Commanders defense, but I'm very excited to see Fangio scheme up a defense that really gives Jaden Daniels a difficult time here. And that's you're fair to ask, well, if they match up so well, how in the world did they score 36 points last time they played these guys? And I would tell you the Eagles certainly did not necessarily take the Commanders seriously that day, and I think there were a lot of aspects to that game that are a little bit fluky that you can kind of throw out with respect to capping this game. And maybe none other than it was in Washington, as opposed to this very, very difficult spot of going on the road and repeating that success.
We've got Trey nodding his head about the fluky part, because why not?
Well, you have Jalen Hurts will not be Kenny Pickett. I think that's fair to say. Then I think the Eagles will have Darius Slay didn't play in that game, I believe, and then obviously C.J. Gardner-Johnson got ejected in that game. So I don't think those two things are going to happen again.
You would hope not if you're a Philadelphia fan. You would also hope, and we'll ask this of Drew Dinsick, NBC Sports Bet the Edge podcast host, talking some NFL and eventually other semifinals, Australian Open, because that's semifinals too, big events. Drew, Philadelphia, if you're going to make a case against them, the injuries that are the unknowns, Jalen Hurts at quarterback, how severe is it? Left leg, plant leg, also as a runner. Quinyon Mitchell, we know about the shoulder stinger. And the one that's not been talked about, but clearly looks like it's been impacting Philly, is A.J. Brown. How concerned are you about those if you're a Philadelphia backer?
I'm concerned, but honestly, there's a lot about Kellen Moore's offense that I don't really like. And if you boil it down to, well, let's just lean on Barkley, I'm fine with that. So if I almost think that those factors, while being real, to me kind of take some of the parts of Eagles offense that I would be a little scared to see out of the equation. And maybe that makes them more predictable. Maybe that makes them more one-dimensional. But really, if you're asking this offensive line, like, hey, go win your one-on-ones and let Barkley do his thing, and we're going to the Super Bowl. Like, that does not seem like an especially tough ask. And honestly, they almost got a pretty compelling win with Kenny Pickett under center. In that second matchup, if it wasn't for a couple of again fluky defensive substitution nonsense that left Zacchaeus wide open for that 49-yard touchdown pass that really made that a game, then Eagles might have put them away by double digits. And I think the Eagles coaching spooks me a bit, just because like Sirianni's not my guy, and like he does a lot of things that may not always football related, that I'm just like, what are you up to, man? But I think I think that short of self-inflicted wounds here, and really maybe calling off the dogs too early, like they did in that game against Washington, like they did last week against the Rams, as long as they can kind of stick to their assignments here and really kind of play for keeps, then I think Philly's coming through. Just for the record, I laid 5.5 before it moved to 6. I think the move to 6 was a little bit of market confirmation that Hurts is going and he's good to go. But I would be surprised if we see much scrambling, much designed run from him. And if his accuracy is a little off, and if his connection to AJ Brown is a little, non-functional, then I think I'll be like, yeah, okay, this was the downside of this offense. But every time Barkley gets the ball, I'm going to be holding my breath for that 80-yard breakout.
Drew Dinsick, Whale_Capper, Twitter and Instagram, NBC Sports Bet the Edge podcast. He's also got the deep dive with Andy Molitor, which drops once a week. Bet the Edge is every weekday. For the other game, it's a 1.5 to 2.5 line in favor of Kansas City against Buffalo. We saw last week that, how do I say this? It doesn't look like the Chiefs care about
Kansas
the line.
City's favored, not Buffalo.
Well, excuse me. Thank you. Kansas City favored by 1.5 to 2.5, depending on where you look. Last week, we saw that Kansas City, it almost seems like they wear it as a badge of honor that they don't cover. Are you better off if you like the Chiefs just laying the juice, backing them on the money line? Because who knows? It might actually be a 1 to 2 point game.
We could have a whole side conversation about what in the world is going on, that there is like an uptick in 2-point results this year. I don't understand it, but 3 is still the king in my mind. And so I think, honestly, I would not shy. The math, I think, would still tell you, like, lay the points with KC if you want them over the money line price. But I will also say this. The margin between these two teams, to me, is very, very narrow. And you are effectively going to be flipping a coin regardless of which side you pick this weekend. And in that spirit, getting one of those sides with plus money appeals to me. And I think that the Chiefs are, if there is like, neither of these teams is the big bad bully that they've been in the past. Not even close. I think these are very beatable teams. And of the two of them, to me, the Chiefs have more of kind of like a little bit of a fraud signal here, and here. The rushing attack is a little bit of smoke and mirrors. The tackle situation is a problem. Like, we could wake up on Monday and be like, hey guys, remember Von Miller is on the Bills? He had 3 sacks and he, a key stop and to knock Mahomes, keep Mahomes from getting that game tying drive in the fourth quarter. Like there's certainly scope here for the pass rush for the Bills to be a factor, considering the quality you're getting from the tackles right now in KC. And then, do they have an answer for Travis Kelce? No. But does anyone else of that, misfit of, group of characters that catches passes really scare you? Not really. The coverage for the Bills is good enough. And I would especially kind of think that the key factor for the Bills, if you're game planning, if you're coming up with an offense here, is to do pretty much what they did last week, which is play keep away. And I know that a game plan that is rush first against the Chiefs is a little bit of a fool's errand, because the Chiefs rush defense is very, very competent. But you do have an advantage, in my opinion, with the way that your offensive line is performing right now against that unit, and you should exercise that advantage. So I'm pretty hopeful that the Bills can come up with some long matriculating drives and really put a little bit of pressure here on the Chiefs, because I don't really want to see Eagles Chiefs again, even though that was a very good game. I don't really feel like reliving all of the same handicapping angles and for what are two pretty similar teams from the 2 years ago. But even more so, I think there's probably an opportunity here where if the Bills come through and they look like the real deal and they do take care of business in Kansas City and finally slay the dragon, there's a world where the Super Bowl line is wrong and Philadelphia is a pretty valuable bet.
Whale_Capper, Twitter, Instagram, NBC Sports Bet the Edge podcast. Drew Dinsick hanging out with us today in the Fast Lane. Drew, pivoting off the NFL, you've given your thoughts there, and more will come later this week on the Bet the Edge podcast. Women's Australian Open. We're going to start with the good for you on the Women's Australian Open. I'm guessing you're feeling a lot better right now that Iga has now shifted into being the odds-on favorite, and who knows, if Paula Badosa upsets Sabalenka tonight, she might even have an easier road to another Grand Slam in her first down under. I mean,
I'm looking past this one, Ed. I'm thinking Iga calendar slam. I mean, I'm being facetious, obviously, but the quality that Iga played with yesterday against Navarro. Now, Navarro is the type of player that is going to make Iga look good when she's on. Like, that's just, it's high ranking, good results, deep into a tournament. Iga just absolutely dominating her game. Like that is kind of how it's supposed to look, and it is probably inflating her price a bit. That said, the quality and shape of her forehand, her kind of unflappable and confident demeanor is all very obvious right now for anyone who's watched much Iga tennis in their life. They're like, I feel like I'm watching Roland Garros being, the French Open being played on blue clay. Like, what's happening? Like, how is she, she just, owning the space so much? And I would expect that she comes through cleanly against Keys, although Keys is a very, very viable opponent. Numbers to me say lean Iga 2-0 in that one, but it's a juicy price, so I'm probably passing. Numbers to me say pretty healthy lean Sabalenka 2-0. It has been a very difficult time for Sabalenka to come through these semifinals in her career. This is the stage of the tournament where she goes mentally a little sideways. And so that I'm always, kind of always on watch for that, like in tournament in particular, or in match in particular. But the fact that she's up against a very friendly opponent in Badosa, and the fact that Badosa doesn't really have much other than just kind of getting returns back to kind of challenge Sabalenka's game, that makes me think that's going to be a pretty clean win as well. So Sabalenka, Iga, I think both come through in straights, and that sets up the match of the year in that you are getting the best player in Iga in form, in her best form for these conditions, against the best player of last year in the conditions that are kind of optimal for her game. And I'm excited to see what that market looks like. My gut says it's going to be something like Iga -115, Sabalenka -105. And I think my numbers would say Sabalenka has a tiny edge if that's the case, but I have no interest in getting in front of the Iga train right now. And in fact, desperately need her to win this title to kind of make me whole for a lot of terrible bets I've made.
We'll get to that right now with Drew Dinsick of Bet the Edge, the NBC Sports podcast. I swear most of his insight is on point, but everybody has their off moments here. Well, do you want me to bring up men's tennis? We'll start with Carlos Alcaraz. I'm with you. Misery loves company. I thought he had a chance to win this thing. He never seemingly adjusted against Novak Djokovic. And the line looked like it was tilting towards Zverev in the semifinals. And now it's back towards Djokovic. Looks like it may settle at about plus 130, plus 135 for Zverev when that match goes off Friday. Are you concerned about the Djokovic injury, or are we at the point now where he can lock in and kind of say, pardon my language, but to hell with it. I've got 2 more of these to go and get another Grand Slam.
I'm red 5-alarm fire concerned about that type of injury. Now, weirdly, Alcaraz was the type of player that should have been able to prey on that more than Zverev is. But Zverev is going to be kind of perfectly content to sit on the baseline here and exchange long rallies and try to make this a physical match. And I think that's going to potentially be an issue for Djokovic with the groin, hamstring, whatever's going on with them. I still don't understand how Alcaraz lost that one. I dumped a lot of money, not just futures book, but in match, thinking, not thinking, but seeing the momentum has clearly shifted in this 4th set here. The break is coming. And then from there, the longer this match goes, the lower likelihood Djokovic is to come through. It didn't happen. He's here. But I get a whiff that the market feels like he's just an invincible, he's an inevitability. He's got an air of invincibility. And I got to tell you, I'm going to be against him this round, and I'm going to be against him in the final if he gets there. Because I cannot fathom that the game that I am seeing is good enough to get him through to 2 more wins in this tournament. And I felt this way in the past about the likes of a Nadal at the last French Open he won. I was like, he can't keep getting away with this. Like, he's a fraction of his former self. I remember seeing this player play so much better, and I had to take the loss. And this may be the same sort of situation here with Djokovic, because he's obviously so confident on that court. But I have Zverev staked. I think Zverev wins. The fact that this is being played during the day matters to me. The fact that Zverev, I don't think we have seen his best tennis because he's been saving it for the later stages, matters. And I think Zverev is going to be very live for a title run here.
To everybody who loves quality individuals, that's not exactly music to your ears. But it might be where we are. Drew Dinsick with us here in the Fast Lane on W227BG Timberlake, WBGMAM Lynchburg, WMNA Gretna, Danville, Southside, and across the Virginia Talk Radio Network. Jannik Sinner. Oh, yes. Well, you recommended Alex de Minaur. Not the worst one. I kind of went the other way and was like, well, I've seen these viral infections, and for Djokovic, an older player, that can really take a while to get over. But for younger players, it's almost like they flush it and then away we go. And well, it was 6-3 or whatever it was, 6-1, 6-3 in the first set, 4-1 in the second. And I'm like, you know what? I think I can just go into hot yoga, and I'm pretty sure when I come out, the match will be done. And that's exactly what happened. Now Sinner, he's gone to -190 to -220 is the favorite to win this thing. And his opponent, Ben Shelton, who actually won his quarter, I'll confess, I had him at 16-1. That was nice to wake up to this morning. He has actually lengthened his odds to win, even though he won the quarter and is in the semifinals. Is this nuts, or is this about what you expect given the history of Sinner and how well he's played?
It would be pretty shocking if Sinner lost this matchup, but I do know that every time these two men have played, Shelton's been able to get to a tiebreak, at least one. He beat him the first time they went head-to-head. I do think that he can make this match longer than the bookmakers make this. I like to win a set at +125, or plus that's essentially the same as the set handicap, +2.5. And I do like over 33 games because I think this is going to be more of a war that is fairly clearly decided in favor of Sinner than it is going to be the type of bloodletting we saw with poor de Minaur. That was pretty sad.
I mean, there's sometimes you can just tell the match outcome is decided pretty early, and that was one of them.
Yeah.
You mentioned liking this to be a long match. Is it something that costs Jannik Sinner in the final against your pick, Zverev or Djokovic, if it happens to be Djokovic getting back? Or, is it at this point justifiable that Sinner is such a heavy favorite to win this whole thing?
Sinner is the best men's tennis player on tour, and he's playing the best tennis on a court that really inspires, his type of game. So I think it's all realistic. If you get a chance to, I guess if we get a mark, if let's say Djokovic does come through, I would expect Sinner to be like -160. And I would probably play him to win straight up 3-0. That's how much I respect his game. If Zverev is there, then I think we got ourselves an interesting final. And I would lean Sinner, but I think that the market is going to make that a healthy Sinner price, and you're going to be able to find ways into his Zverev bet.
It'll be fun. It's worth monitoring and watching, and you'll get insight leading up to it from Bet the Edge, the podcast co-hosted by Drew Dinsick, who's generous enough to join us in the Fast Lane. Drew, thank you for your time. It's always great to catch up with you, and hope you have a wonderful and more profitable than it's been in some areas rest of the Australian Open.
Cheers, mate. I appreciate that, and I hope to wish you best to you as well.
Indeed. Drew Dinsick with us here to wrap up the Fast Lane. That's how we wrap it up today. We're back tomorrow afternoon at 5, VTR and Sports app.